All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of you are really curious about. Closing deals.
Yeah.
And, you sent over some materials that look really fascinating, almost like a podcast script itself.
Oh, wow.
Kind of meta, right?
Exactly.
So we've got our expert here to help us unpack all this. They're fantastic at breaking down even the most complex ideas.
Nice.
So we're in good hands. Now, the first thing that really jumped out at me from these materials was this huge emphasis on trust.
Right.
It's everywhere. It's almost like it's the key to unlocking everything else.
It really is, yeah.
But what I found really interesting is the source doesn't just say trust is important. It actually lays out some concrete strategies for building it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, for instance, there's this technique it highlights called mirroring, subtly reflecting your client's language and body language back at them. It sounds pretty simple on the surface, but apparently it can create this powerful sense of rapport, almost like subconsciously increasing trust.
That's really effective, yeah. It's kind of fascinating.
Wow. Yeah. It's like you're speaking their language, literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
I never thought about it that way before.
Yeah.
And, that really connects to this whole idea of transparency, which the source brings up a lot.
Right.
Being upfront with your clients, even when things aren't going so great, is apparently way better in the long run than trying to sugarcoat things or hide things.
Absolutely.
You know what? That actually reminds me of this time I was looking for a new apartment a while back.
Oh, tell me about it. I've got stories.
Oh, I bet you do.
Yeah.
So the agent was showing me this place that looked incredible online in the photos. But when we got there in person, it was obvious they had used some, let's just say, creative photography.
Oh, yeah. The classic wide-angle lens trick, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the agent just kept trying to distract me from all the issues, pointing out, the charming exposed brick, when I was more worried about the fact that the charming exposed brick was literally crumbling.
Oh, no.
I felt like they just weren't being straight with me, and it totally destroyed my trust. Needless to say, I didn't end up renting that place.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy how just one little thing like that can totally shift your perception, right? It makes you wonder how many deals fall apart because someone wasn't completely honest from the start.
No, tons, I'm sure.
Right. And that actually leads us perfectly into the next big idea from the source, active listening.
Yeah.
Which is more than just hearing the words your client is saying. It's truly grasping their needs and motivations.
Right.
So more than just nodding along and saying, I understand.
Yeah. You really got to dig deep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source has this great example. It says, like, a client might say they're looking for a house with a huge backyard, but what they're really after is space for their kids to play, maybe a place to entertain friends. So if you get hung up on just the big backyard part, you might totally miss the real motivation behind it.
Exactly. You need to figure out what they're actually looking for.
Yeah, like you got to be a detective, reading between the lines to uncover those real needs. It makes a lot of sense.
That's the key.
And once you actually understand that, you can tailor your whole approach to really meet those needs.
Right.
In a way that feels authentic and personalized. Right?
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the part I think a lot of people get kind of nervous about, negotiation. Is it actually possible to approach it as a win-win scenario? Or is that just some wishful thinking?
That's a great question.
Is it?
A lot of people think of negotiation as this adversarial thing, this battle.
Yeah.
But the source material here, it really makes a strong argument for the win-win approach.
Okay.
And it really stresses preparation.
Oh, for sure.
Like, you've got to know the market inside and out. You need to understand your client's boundaries and have a plan for dealing with any roadblocks. Like, going into a battle, you don't just charge in without a strategy, right?
Right. No, absolutely not.
Exactly.
But what about those really competitive situations like bidding wars?
Yeah.
It feels like it's every person for themselves in those scenarios.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Okay.
But the source actually gives a really good example of how to handle a tough negotiation even in a super competitive market.
Okay.
It talks about this real estate agent who was working with a buyer who was just head over heels for this particular house. But the seller was being really difficult.
Oh, no.
Wouldn't budge on the price at all.
Oh, man. So what did the agent do?
So instead of going back and forth with the seller, just haggling, the agent decided to take a step back and really think about the seller's motivations.
Okay, yeah.
And it turned out that the seller was super attached to the house, had a lot of memories there, wanted to make sure it went to someone who would really appreciate it.
Wow.
So the agent helped her client write this heartfelt letter to the seller. explaining why they loved the house so much and what they plan to do with it.
Oh. And did it work?
It totally did. The seller was so touched by the letter that they actually accepted the buyer's offer, even though it wasn't the highest.
Wow. That's amazing. It really is about more than just the numbers sometimes, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's about finding that human connection, appealing to their emotions.
Exactly. And that's something that the source emphasizes throughout. Negotiation is about solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, being the most aggressive or trying to outsmart the other side. It's about finding creative solutions that work for everyone.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But what about creating urgency? It seems like something that could be easily misused.
Oh, for sure. And the source material is really clear that creating urgency should never be about using pressure tactics or trying to manipulate your client. It's about honestly presenting the facts. Like, if you know that there are multiple offers on a property or that interest rates are about to jump up,
Yeah.
those are totally legitimate reasons to encourage your client to act quickly.
Right. Okay.
But it's also about helping them see the potential consequences of waiting. Like, potentially missing out on their dream home.
Yeah. Missing out. Okay.
Right. And the source makes it really clear how important it is to do this ethically. You're not trying to scare your client into a decision they'll regret. You're trying to give them the information they need to make a good choice.
Okay.
It's like you're their trusted advisor guiding them through the process.
Exactly. And finally, let's talk about overcoming objections. This is something I know a lot of people really struggle with.
Yeah. It's easy to feel like you've hit a wall when someone raises an objection. But the source material actually frames objections as opportunities.
Opportunities. That's an interesting way to look at it.
Right. It's saying that objections aren't necessarily roadblocks. They're chances to learn more about your client's concerns and figure out how to address them in a way that builds trust and moves the deal forward.
Okay.
The source outlines a 3-step process for handling objections. Acknowledge the concern, offer solutions, and then reframe the objection.
Okay, let's break that down. Can we use an example?
Sure.
Let's say you're selling a house and the potential buyer says the kitchen's too small.
Okay, so first you acknowledge their concern. You could say something like, yeah, I understand that kitchen size is really important to you.
Yeah.
Then you offer solutions like, maybe, have you considered expanding the kitchen? There's actually a lot of room to do that in the dining room next to it.
Right.
Or you could point out that the kitchen, while small, is super efficiently designed, has tons of counter space and storage.
Okay, yeah.
And then you could reframe the objection, highlight the positive aspects of a smaller kitchen. A smaller kitchen can actually create a more intimate and social cooking experience.
I love that. Turning a potential negative into a positive. Do you think this same kind of approach could work in our personal lives too? Not just in business?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you're trying to convince a friend to go on a trip with you,
Yeah.
and they say they just can't afford it.
Okay.
So first, you acknowledge their concern. Like, I totally get it. Traveling can get expensive.
Right.
Then you offer solutions. Maybe we could check out some more budget-friendly options like staying in hostels or traveling during the off-season. Or, hey, maybe we could do a shorter trip this time and save up for a longer one later.
Okay, yeah.
And then you reframe the objection. Talk about the value of experiences over material things, you could say. Think about the memories we'll create and the stories we'll have. That's priceless.
Wow, I'm already seeing how this could apply to so many different areas in life.
Right.
It's like you said, it's not just about closing deals. It's really about effective communication as a whole.
Exactly.
And that brings us to a really interesting question.
It really makes you wonder if these closing deal principles are so effective in real estate, where else in life could they apply? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's funny because these principles really do seem kind of universal.
Huh?
I'm thinking about the workplace.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine trying to, negotiate a raise or a promotion.
Yeah.
It's all about building that trust with your boss, by consistently doing good work, actively listening to their feedback,
Right.
understanding their priorities.
Yeah.
And then when you make your request, framing it in a way that shows how valuable you are to the company.
Exactly. Highlighting the benefits you bring.
It all kind of ties in.
It does.
You're right. It's not just about what you want. It's about how you can help them achieve their goals, too.
Exactly.
And think about how you could use those techniques to overcome objections in the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
Like, say, your boss isn't too keen on approving your proposal for a new project.
Hmm.
Instead of getting all defensive, you could acknowledge their concerns, offer solutions to, minimize any risks, and then reframe that objection by focusing on the potential benefits for the company.
Exactly. Turn it into a positive.
So even in those tougher conversations, you can stay calm, focused on solutions.
That's the key. Stay calm and look for solutions together.
Exactly. And you know what? I think this goes way beyond just the professional world, too. These principles could be super valuable in our personal relationships as well.
Oh, 100%.
It's funny, I hadn't really thought about it like that.
Yeah. Well, think about it.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to convince your partner to go to that new restaurant you've been wanting to try.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of jumping right into a full-blown sales pitch,
Right, right.
you could start by actively listening to their reasons for being hesitant.
Okay, so what would that sound like?
Maybe they had a bad experience at a similar place before,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they're just not in the mood for that kind of food right now.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Right. And once you get where they're coming from, you can start to address those concerns. You could say, hey, you mentioned having a bad experience at that other place. What was it about that experience you didn't like?
Right.
Or, I understand you're not really feeling Italian tonight. Is there something else you'd be more in the mood for?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all about showing them that you value their opinion
Right.
and you're genuinely trying to find something that works for both of you,
Exactly. It's a collaboration.
not like forcing them into it.
Exactly.
You know what? I actually think these principles apply even to those tiny everyday interactions too.
Oh, totally. I agree.
Okay, let's say you're at the grocery store, right?
Hmm.
And the cashier accidentally rings up the wrong price for something.
Yeah. Happens all the time.
Instead of getting all frustrated and demanding to see the manager,
Right.
you can just calmly point out the mistake and ask them to fix it.
Exactly. Just be polite.
Yeah, just approach the situation with some empathy, even if it's just a little thing.
Exactly. Everyone makes mistakes.
Right, we've all been there. It's amazing, isn't it, how these really simple principles can make such a big difference in how we interact with people.
It's really powerful. It's like we've been given this whole new toolbox for dealing with, well, life.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And anyone can use them. You don't have to be like a real estate mogul or a business expert to benefit from this stuff.
Exactly.
You can start incorporating these ideas into your life, like right now,
Absolutely.
today.
So just to recap, we've talked about how building trust, actively listening, mastering negotiation, creating urgency ethically, and overcoming objections are all really crucial skills for, well, closing deals.
Mm-hmm.
But what's even more interesting, I think, is that these skills can be used far beyond the world of real estate.
Right, way beyond
They
it.
can help us be better communicators at work, strengthen our relationships, and even make those little everyday interactions that can be kind of a pain a little smoother.
Exactly.
It's all about shifting our perspective,
Mhm.
instead of seeing these interactions as battles to be won.
Right. It's about seeing them as opportunities to work together.
Collaboration, that's the word.
Exactly. For mutual benefit.
It is.
And what really stands out to me from the source material is how much emphasis it puts on empathy.
Yes.
It's not about manipulating people
Right. No truth.
or using like shady tactics. It's about genuinely understanding their needs and finding ways to meet them in a way that feels authentic and respectful.
And that's what makes this approach so powerful. It's not just about closing deals.
Hmm.
It's about building those genuine connections.
It's about creating those win-win situations where everyone feels heard,
Mm-hmm.
respected, valued. We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
and I feel like we've only just, dipped our toes in the water here.
Oh, yeah, there's so much more to explore.
There's always more to learn. But before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. If these principles are so universally applicable, why aren't they more widely taught? Like, why do we often approach negotiation and persuasion as if it's a battle to be won, rather than a process of working together?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's true. We do tend to default to this adversarial way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
even when, it's clear that everyone would benefit from just collaborating.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think part of it might be that we're kind of conditioned from a young age to see everything as a zero-sum game. Like someone wins, someone loses, and one person's success has to come at someone else's expense.
Right.
We're always told to compete to be the best, and I think that can make us see any kind of interaction as like a potential threat. We forget that we can actually achieve way more when we work together.
Yeah, absolutely. We get so caught up in, like, I have to win this, that we miss out on the bigger picture.
Exactly. And I think another part of it is that we're often, maybe even subconsciously, afraid to be vulnerable, like to really show our true selves and admit that we need help.
Oh, that's interesting.
But real connection, true collaboration, it requires that vulnerability. It's
Hmm.
about being willing to let our guard down a little, to trust that the other person actually cares about what's best for us.
That's a really good point. It's about building bridges, not walls.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we're all in this together. We all have similar needs and desires. We all want to feel seen, heard, and respected.
Absolutely.
And when we approach our interactions with that kind of mindset, it really does change everything.
Yeah,
It's not about winning or losing anymore. It's about finding solutions that benefit everyone involved. And I think that's a much more fulfilling way to live, don't you?
it is. Yeah. So much less stressful, too.
Right.
So as we kind of wrap up here today, what would you say to our listeners? Like, how can they start using these ideas in their own lives?
Well, just be mindful of these principles as you go about your day. See if you can find little opportunities to apply them in your interactions with other people,
Okay.
even in those small everyday moments.
Right, because those little moments really add up, don't they?
They do. And remember, it's not about being perfect at this. It's just about being more intentional with how we communicate.
Mm.
It's about making that conscious choice to listen more deeply, to communicate more effectively, and to build stronger relationships. Who knows, you might find that by changing your approach, you can change your whole world.
You really might. Well said. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all of your amazing insights.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And listeners, as always, we want to hear from you. Have you ever used these closing deal principles in an unexpected situation? What happened? Share your stories, your thoughts, and your questions in the comments below. We're all learning and growing together here. And remember, even the smallest interactions can be opportunities for growth and connection. So go out there and close some deals, in whatever form they may take. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep exploring those hidden connections